What is wrong with our society today? When did we decide that this was acceptable loungewear? Hey, that hoodie is more stained than sweatshirt, and your yoga pants are made of Swiss cheese. Well, the world is on fire and we're all overwhelmed, and all we want to do is cuddle up in our comfy clothes with some snacks and our stuffies. Okay. Girl, there's a better way. One that's equally as comfortable and doesn't involve flashing people in public, and it has power sleeves. Puffy sleeves? Go forth, child, and make thyself an 1890s tea gown. Let's go. Fashionable undress has been around for centuries. People in the past have needed a bridge between sleepwear and daywear as much as we do. From the revolutionary robe de chambre in the 1600s, to the wrappers of the 18th and 19th centuries, and into the bustle period and the dawn of the tea gown. These were gorgeous, over-the-top, floaty garments, appropriate for casual entertaining in the home, but not for going out to the shops. Perfect for a morning tea, or just for your work from home days, because you deserve to look fabulous while you're answering all those emails. Bonjour. And I mean literally, because somehow I have dragged myself away from Civilization 6 and gotten started on my day on a weekend before noon. And speaking of hell freezing over, I did a thing. I paid somebody to print this pattern out. I don't know about you, but I am loath to pay somebody to do something that I can do myself. But when I opened up this file and saw that it was 250 pages, that's half a ream of paper, I was like, nope. So I bucked it up, I shelled out the dough, and I have zero regrets. So let's get this cut out. It took me 2.5 hours. It was so much cutting that I'm starting to get a blister on my thumb from my scissors. I didn't even cut out half of it for reasons you'll see in a little bit. It's a big pattern, kids. Off camera, I went ahead and made my normal waist adjustments, and now we're ready to do the FBA. Now you might be looking at this pattern and be thinking, but Jackie, this is a gathered front and it is loose and it is belted with a tie. Why do you need to do an FBA? For two reasons. Firstly, the gathering. The gathering is made for a certain amount of space in the front, and it is made for somebody with a B cup. That means me putting it on, I will have gathers, but I won't have the proportionate amount of gathers. Two, the side flaps are not going to reach out as far as they need to reach. So we do need to extend that a little bit. The second reason is, even though it looks like it's loose, it's not. It's fully lined from the shoulders all the way down to the hips. And that is lined with a princess seamed lining. I will definitely have to do an FBA on that. Now, I do not intend to fully line this thing. I want it to be able to be worn all year round, and if you couldn't tell by my dewy complexion, it's a bit hot here where I live. So I will only be using the lining where it structurally makes sense to do so, but we're going to fit the full lining anyway, because that'll tell me how many inches I need to extend all the other front pieces. Luckily, with princess seams, we don't have to do all of the cutting and the measuring and the calculations and the taping and the redrawing and all that nonsense that comes with a normal FBA on a darted bodice. Oh no, princess seams are much simpler, and we can do it with just a little bit of a dance move. Assemble your entire mock-up together, then mark the top and bottom point of your bust on the seam line and rip out the stitches. All goofing aside, I cut off the seam allowances along the length of the space. Then I tucked some scrap fabric into the opening and traced the outline. Then measure the distance at the widest point. And now we get to transfer all of our changes onto all 8, count them 8, bodice pieces that are included in this pattern. Much like cutting out the pattern pieces, this was kind of a slog. The TLDR, I shortened the shoulder for my hobbit frame. Then I measured out the bust adjustments, first on the lining pieces, and then on all the pieces for the actual gown. So I took this to work and I went ahead and utilized the conference room table on my lunch break. Trying to wrangle 11 yards of very slippery tissue weight silk is a headache as it is, let alone trying to do it on my tiny apartment floor. So I probably saved myself a good hour and a half of wrangling. The contrast fabric, on the other hand, is a little more manageable. I flat out don't have enough contrast fabric. I wasn't 100% paying attention when I ordered this. In fact, I hadn't even bought the pattern yet. So I just kind of made an assumption, and that assumption was wrong, that 4 yards was going to be enough. That's a heck of a lot of fabric just for the center front piece. Okay, so I wrote down all of the things that all of these are because it's so confusing. There's so many different pieces. I mean, look, this is piece number 28 here. The things that are underlined are the things that I absolutely need. I need the center front drape, which is the center front of the gown, the side drape, which is the side of the gown, the ties, and then over here we need the collar as well. All of the rest of this stuff. So the sleeve drape, we're gonna do something different with the sleeves, which I'll talk about later in the video. So I don't need the sleeve facing, I don't need the sleeve drape. That leaves us with flap number 6. This is supposed to be the lining for the copper bit. There is no way I can get that piece 6 out of this length of fabric. However, it's just a lining, so I'm not gonna worry about it. However, the side drape is gonna need some doctoring. This is the continuous yardage I have left over. If this was on the grain, I would be fine, but it's not. I am that much too short. That hurts my soul. But piecing is period, so let's get her done. Alrighty, if you've ever made a robe à la française before, aka a Ralph, you will know this, but the hardest part is going to be that watteau pleating, the pleating in the back. So naturally, we're going to do that first and knock it out. First, you need to sew the center back of the skirt to the center back of the watteau pleat. Everyone's brain processes pleating in a different way. This is how my brain processes it. Let's see if it makes sense to you. So we've got the back and the watteau sewn together. Here are our pleat marks. This is the center back here. This is the watteau pleat. This is the center of the pleat. We're making a giant inverted box pleat on the back of this. So we're gonna take this here, we're gonna bring it up, and it's gonna go over, and we're gonna flip over the seam allowance on the center back here so we know where to stop. This center seam should line up with the seam line on the back, if that makes sense. And then we'll repeat on the other side. But instead we're gonna go towards the watteau. And again, we're gonna flip this up. We're gonna line up this center seam. If you can't eyeball 5/8, draw it off to make your life a little bit easier. Once you've wrangled all of that fabric, baste the pleats together by hand. Don't catch the dress in your stitching, only the pleats. Repeat for the second skirt pleat. Next, wrangle that fabric, cow person, and pin your center backs together. Ugh. Never again. If you're enjoying this video or finding it helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up and saying hello in the comments. These little things go a long way into supporting this channel. I'd also like to take this moment to thank all of my supporters over on Ko-fi. You are the backbone of this channel. And I couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much for your continued support. I've linked to my page if you have the means to contribute, or if you even want to just check out the free content that I have up over there. Do the same for the watteau pleat. Whoops, should have flatlined that back piece. Wrong, I cut it on the fold. Past Jackie is smart. Crisis averted. Onto the side back, which we will flatline. I'm using cotton voile here. You want super lightweight fabrics for this project because, as you'll see later in the video, stuff gets thick. I should have basted this first because this curve seam is horrid, but I didn't, so learn from my mistakes. The pattern specifically states that this next skirt seam be sewn before we do the pleats here, but that the option is you can do the pleats before you sew the seam, and I would definitely do that because, as you can see, like, not so easy to get my little iron in to iron out this seam, and this is a tiny little iron. Here's the last pleat we need to do on this panel. Here are the other two we've already done. It's the same process as before, matching the seams and basting them down. Okay, let's add the side piece. Okay, so there are no additional pleats on piece number 5, which is the side piece. So that just got sewed on like a normal piece would. Now, some of you very keen observers might have noticed that this is the inside of the back, and the Watteau pleat is completely inside the back and sewed completely closed. We have to do a little bit of trickery to turn this right side out and get it to the outside of the back. Let's do it. We have to clip into the seam allowance right here. Then we reach up inside and flip it, and it's magically right side out. And now it's time for Potato Jackie to take over for just a little bit. First, she is going to bone the 3 seams in the center back. This is listed as optional in the directions. I highly recommend it. It will give you that lovely, nice structure to the back and won't be uncomfortable at all. She is then going to secure all of the pleats on both sides, as well as tack in a waist tape. Now in the instructions, the waist tape is treated like a real waist tape where it is tacked to the back and then pulled and you buckle it or hook and eye close it in the front. I'm going to do just a little bit differently, but for now I'm just going to tack it to the back. Also, for those of you who have noticed the weird pink bits to my hand, this is what I was working on yesterday. Some lovely ombre dyed skirts panels. Okay, so now we have to move on to the center front contrast. We have our front drape attached to our side drape pieces, and then we also have the front stay attached to the side stay. Note for both of these cases, the center front is cut on the fold, and there is a left side opening in the front drape, which is crazy because the lining itself is buttoned all the way down the center front. So when you're trying to get this on, you have to open the left side of the drape and then awkwardly button it up and then close it again. We're not about that. We're about easy on, easy off. Get your mind out of the gutter. I've run basting stitches on the shoulder and the front here, and we're gonna match it up to here. It is quite tight. And then we'll do the same for this bit here. This will match this. So the neckline and the center front edge. The other seams will get basted from the outside. Okay, my hand sewing is done, so let's finish up the back piece. First, let's pleat the Watteau. It needs to be pleated down to 4.5 inches. I'm a pleat by eye sort of person, so let's have at it. Baste down your pleats. If you haven't noticed, this back neck area is starting to get chunky. In an astounding turn of events, we're going to add even more fabric to the back, courtesy of a neck facing. Time to change needle sizes from the delicate fabrics to the honkers. Well, slightly chunky, shall we say. Not me editing this video and suddenly wishing I'd opt for purple contrast instead of blue. Oh, no. Okay, my friends, we have our 2 completed center front pieces. Whoop. We also have our completed back piece. We also have the side flaps, which I have successfully lined with my Stola lining fabric with very little piecing, I'm happy to say. So now we have to put all of these pieces together. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be one of the most annoying parts of the entire process, not because this is a particularly difficult thing to do. It is literally just the side seams and the shoulder seams, 4 very straight lines, but we are dealing with multiple layers of very slippery silk. It is also extremely unforgiving. If you've ever worked with silk taffeta, you know that every single stitch is visible even if you take the thread out. There is no margin for error here unless I want my stitches edges to be visible where my mistakes were. A smarter person who had more time would probably hand stitch these seams. I would very much like to hand stitch these seams, but I'm in con crunch right now, and so I don't have the time. So we're going to pin this more than an acupuncturist on a reality TV show and take our time and get it done right the first time. First, let's base the side flap to the center front panel. When you pin the shoulder, make sure you leave the neck facing free, as well as the waist tape at the side. Okay, we're going to let this hang overnight while we contemplate the sleeves. So far, we've been following the pattern pretty close. The specific Laughing Moon pattern is for about 1875 through 1885, which is basically like the second half of the first bustle era through natural form and into the first half of the second bustle era. That's not confusing or anything. The cool thing is I was browsing through an edition of the Delineator from 1893 and came across this image, which is almost exactly the same as the one we're working on, except for one very important change. If you've been around here a while, you know what that change is. You're gonna up the ante just a little bit more and go full on leg of mutton. Because you know what I just happen to have handy? That's right, that is a Laughing Moon pattern, which means that I don't have to do any fitting. It's already together. It's already the size that I need it. The only change we have to make is obviously to the elbow portion. We're going to do a simple gather with elastic for comfort. Here's where I want to cut off at the elbow. I'm going to add a total of 5 inches to the edge. Then extend it down a little to make a ruffle. We'll install a fabric channel on the lining to put the elastic in. With larger puffy sleeves like this, I like to add a little additional support set slightly away from the arm side to support the puff. This is optional, but it makes a difference. These are the little crescents I simply gathered and tacked to the inside. Now let's tack on the lining over top. Note that in this period of time, I really should have full sleeves, but I'm going to go ahead and stop it at the elbow because I want this to be wearable year-round. At some point, if I feel like it, I may make little gauntlets if I have enough of the blue fabric left over when I'm all finished with this, but that is not a main focus for us, and it's not going to be something you see today. I dyed some cotton twill tape and attached it to the waist tape. This is going to serve as a drawstring / waist tape. We'll attach this bit of wall to the inside of the front for the channel like we did with the sleeves. It's visible from the front, but this will all be covered by the fancy bow at the end. Another weird quirk of this pattern is the collar is laid in by hand because there's just so much material at the center back. I don't have stiff interfacing, so I'm using 2 layers of regular sew-in instead. So we'll prepare this collar in the regular method, sewing the 3 edges, trimming seams and clipping curves, and then flipping out. I really wanted to use the blue silk for this, not the voile, but I misplaced it while I was prepping this and only just found it last night when the whole darn thing is just about done. So I may take this off in the future and redo it, we'll see. Okay, so now I'm clipping into the seam allowance on the bottom. We need to be able to move this around the curved neckline. You can opt to sew the whole thing shut first and then whip it to the neckline, but I'm an INTJ, so we're gonna do it all in one swoop. I'm following the pattern here and attaching the edges of the collar to the flaps and not the center front for a more dramatic collar look. It would be more indicative of the 1890s if I attached it to the latter, but I don't like collars tight to my neck. Well, my genius idea to only gather the elastic in the sleeves to the lining absolutely failed. So now I get to re-sew the channel, attaching the silk to the lining. Okay, last thing to do, except for a couple of hooks and eyes, is to make the pretty bow. The bow can be sewed as a tube, but I'm opting to just hem it since it's the same on both sides and, well, I ran out of fabric. Whew! This was epic, y'all. I made my life so hard trying to do this and finish up my outfit for the Georgian Global Salon in Seattle. I do not recommend. I do recommend, however, checking out that amazing event, especially if you live in the Pacific Northwest. Costumers of Color is a great organization. Everyone is super friendly, and this is the second year that I've gone and had the most fun. And you know, it wasn't 95 degrees outside. This is not the final iteration of this tea gown. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to change the collar and add some detachable gauntlets to the end of the sleeves. I also want to trim it, but I haven't found the right trim for it yet. And eventually I'll add a balayeuse to the train to keep it clean while I'm swanning through my apartment. If you enjoyed this video and would like to watch another, why not check out this one here on the screen where I make this Laughing Moon blouse, but with fully detachable sleeves. That's about it for me. Thanks for watching. I love y'all, and I'll catch you in my next video.